In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can
Banter's
do
being
for your
captured.
country.
So, Taylor, we are up and running, and
Yes.
we now have one full week of experimentation on whether splitting the episodes up seems to be a good thing or a bad thing. I feel like the influx of people writing to us means it's a good thing.
Yeah, that also coincides with our ad. I have one person that we don't know. She did mention that she was like, I could take it or leave it. And I was like, perfect. And then Juan, who we do know, my husband, whose idea was, he was like, you guys sounded nervous and not convinced. And I was like, it was our first time. What did you think we were going to be excited? What? So I think we'll keep going, see
So,
what happens.
I do want to point out that so far, Taylor, I am absolutely crushing it in the rankings. I have one more listen than you have,
Mm-hmm.
which
I am worried this is going to tear us apart.
it's already starting. It is absolutely already starting.
I'm gonna get some other devices and just listen to mine so I can get one more.
There you go. And I guess in that case, it actually doesn't matter who goes first because what is it? It's going to be spliced up anyways, right?
Yeah, well, why don't you go first and we'll just so we can keep people guessing.
Okay, we'll do that.
All right.
I guess, are we doing the drink thing or no?
Yeah, we definitely can.
Okay, so you want to tell me what you're drinking?
Yes, I'm drinking Diet Coke and wine, not together, separately. I know you know this, but I just got home from Girl Scout camp and it was super fun, but I've just done like 7 loads of laundry. It was very dusty and dirty, but a blast. And we made it just in time. Our car broke down. All these things happened, but I have wine to make me feel better.
The Mazda is still broken down.
Yeah, well, there's nothing open on the weekends, so I had to it broke down in the middle of like a big road here in town, and then it had a weird noise, and then the screen said, "Warning, pull over now." So I pulled over, and then I drove it to a garage, and they were like, "We close in 10 minutes. You have to be here in 10 minutes." So I drove. It only at that point it wouldn't even go faster than 20, and it was getting really hot. So I have no idea. I don't know. And so I kind of coasted into the garage, made it just in time, and they're gonna look at it tomorrow, which is Monday. So, and then I got to the Enterprise Saturday morning to go to Girl Scout camp, and they were like, "We don't have any cars," and I started to cry, and they gave me a pickup truck.
There you
So
go.
I'm home, and I'm happy to be home.
And the Ford truck is still working, right?
Oh yeah, that one's brand new. That one's working fine. I ended up getting a gigantic, I don't know, some GM something. So I have a gigantic truck now that I drove up into the mountains to our beautiful Girl Scout camp and had a great weekend with my girl.
Well, thank God for Henry Ford and his invention of the assembly line.
Mm-hmm. Singularly invented it by himself.
I had to do that. That was a little dig.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're back. You're safe. That everybody's happy and healthy and all that good stuff. And that looks like a nice bottle of wine. Is that 19 Crimes?
Oh yeah, this crime was. Oh God, I read it and I was like, that's funny. I think it was like imported coffee or something weird. I can't remember what it was.
Well,
The crime on my
discussing. We're going to be discussing someone who did worse than import coffee.
Yeah, I think that's the joke, is that they're not that bad. I think Australia is trying to redeem themselves and say we're not all murderers. Some of us just accidentally did something small.
Taylor,
Sure, Australia.
can I tell you how weird it is that you just said that? Because I'm covering an Australian murderer. That is so weird.
This episode is brought to you by 19 Crimes. Australia, not just murderers.
Oh my God, that's so weird. Why did you just say that? That's so. Oh my God. Guys, we never talk about our episodes beforehand. The fact that Taylor just said that is so weird to me.
I'm gonna fill my glass up to the tippy top with this, and then I'll be drinking one glass of wine.
Well, I'll kick things off. So I'm just drinking electrolyte water. I'm actually gonna go to yoga in the park here in Zilker in Austin, which is every Sunday during the summertime, and you basically do yoga with a bunch of strangers, then you hop in the lake. That's the idea.
That sounds gross and very humid. And also, I never want to be in a lake again. Oh my God, I was on a horse this weekend. I was like, never again will I be on a horse, and I never want to be in a lake again. You can't see the bottom. There's dead bodies in there. I'm happy for you. No, I'm excited for you.
Taylor, it's so weird that you said that too, because someone from my past, this isn't funny. So stop.
I'm holding my wine. I'm trying not to spill it because I'm laughing so hard. Keep going. I'm gonna put it down. It's very full.
I know someone who was just found in a lake.
You do not.
Yeah.
Swimming happily and having a great time.
No, from what I could read, it looks
Mm.
like it was a domestic violence thing, and she was thrown in there after being beaten to death.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. That's terrible.
I know, but then you just said that thing, and I was just like, what is going on, dude? Like, what else do you see, Taylor? Like, what's.
I don't know, but I'll put on a Google alert for a farmer soaking sandwich for the rest of the day for when something
Yeah.
happens to
The media's not going to report that.
you.
So I'm just gonna drink electrolyte water for the time being, but I do want to have a glass of wine when I get home from this yoga thing. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna kick things off with saying that, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we've had listeners write in, which we really, really appreciate. It's so fun. It's so awesome getting people's feedback and input and thoughts on what we're doing and making suggestions. And we got one suggestion like that from somebody named Nadine from Edmonton, Alberta. Thank you, first off, Nadine, for writing in and your suggestion about looking into more true crime stories that are based out of Canada, our friendly neighbors to the north. So I started researching Canadian crimes, true crimes that could be interesting. And one thing that I try to do is I try to make my stuff more obscure because I feel like all the big people are already covered to death. There's no need to rehash anything. There's nothing new or interesting. And the more I looked into Canada, like you guys just generally are way less violent than we are. Like there's just not that much there. There's a handful. Robert Hansen comes to mind, which is a pretty bad one that a lot of people probably don't know. But the biggest ones are going to be like the two that you actually mentioned when you wrote into us, Nadine, which was Willie Picton and Carla Homolka and her husband, fiance, whatever, Paul Bernardo. Those are really the big ones that come to mind when you think about Canada. And so I decided to kind of go a different direction. I started looking at other Commonwealth countries and see what might be going on there. And Taylor already ruined it because now you already know where the other story is based in. It is Australia. So
Oh
thank
my
you,
God.
Taylor.
I feel like recently, like after the coronation of King Charles, there's so many maps that are like, fuck you, England, for colonizing all the world. And then now you're just like back to England. It's really funny. So I'm like, that could be anywhere, but I like that it's Australia.
It's true. It could be anywhere. I went with Australia, and I was kind of inspired by one of my favorite movies. I actually own this movie. It's called Wolf Creek. Taylor, have you seen Wolf Creek?
I think so.
Okay.
This is scary.
Yes,
Would I
it's
have seen
meant
it
to be
with
a horror
Jay?
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might have seen it with Jay. Also, happy belated birthday, Jay.
Oh, Jay, happy birthday.
I don't think it's scary in terms of like goriness or like torture pornness. It's more just like scary from like the perspective of like the plot and like what ended up going on. The reason that I found it super terrifying is because it takes place in the Australian Outback, and the Australian Outback is huge and menacing. And if you're like in trouble in the Australian Outback, you're on your own.
Yeah.
There's nobody saving you. And the actual story isn't in the Australian Outback. It's actually in New South Wales, which is one of the most populous states in the country, but it does take place in
Hmm.
like a remote area. The movie itself, the Wolf Creek movie, it is based on the guy we're talking about today, and that is in the Australian Outback. So the movie is based on a very specific serial killer who was operating in New South Wales in Australia in the 1980s. Well, we know for sure he was operating in the 1980s and 1990s. I'm going to describe why we think he was also operating before then, but we'll get that later. His
Hmm.
name is Ivan Milat, and that's what we're going to be
Okay.
discussing today. First things first, I love Aussies. Like I've been to Australia many, many times. I love it. I love the people. Like if
I know
I
you really have been there many times. I applaud you for that scam you pulled at Nation Builder to get free trips to Australia.
You know what? I'm not going to say it. Never mind. I'm not incriminating myself in a public format.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. You're
Yes,
like, oh, I'll
yes,
cover Australia, you guys. No big deal.
yeah. I did go for myself there, but it's so fun. I love the people, the cultures there. It's really cool. They're so chill. They're just fun, chill people, and I think that's a byproduct of like why you don't hear a lot about vicious serial killers coming out of Australia because they're just such a happy-go-lucky kind of people. But when they do
Uh,
produce a psychopath, they produce a big one. I cut you
totally.
off.
No, I just wanted to say I listened to a lot of Case File, just in the Case File.
No.
It's like an Australian guy who does it, and but it's like a lot of Australian stories because like you're saying, like the Outback is so huge, and then like during like I don't know if this is in your story or not, and I'm probably reading your mind, but like there was so much like hitchhiking, and like
God damn it,
talking
Taylor.
to
What are you
strangers.
doing? You're
Well,
ruining
there's so
everything.
many Australian hitchhiking murders. Give me one. I'm ready.
Ugh.
Do you remember
Okay.
in school learning that Australian kids had to do school over the radio?
No, I never heard
I feel
that.
like that was like in our like social studies book. There would always be a picture of like some blonde Australian kid with like a shortwave wave radio next to like a kangaroo. And it'd be like Benny lives in the outback.
Vastly different education systems, I would imagine. I wonder how many more things you're gonna guess, like just generally
I'm
on
really
this episode.
excited.
So you're already
What
up to
should I
like
do after
four.
this? Should I play the lottery?
Yeah, you seriously should, Taylor. Like if you're like plugged into something right now, like leverage it.
Okay, good. It's just half a bottle of wine. Keep going.
Okay, so I brought up our old friends last podcast on the left because they had this method of talking about serial killers in like a tiered fashion. So, for example, they have your A team, and that's going to be your Dahmers, your Gacy's, your Bundys. Then you have the B team, which is going to be like Eileen Wuornos and Gary Ridgway. Then you're going to have the C and the D team. And usually, the way the last podcast team talks about it is that those people are probably more fascinating, but they are also like super duper brutal in a way that makes
Hmm.
them not really that appealing from a mainstream perspective. And I'm thinking about like specifically how they talk about Dean Coral or Bob Bordello. Like those two guys were like vicious in a way that like is fascinating to think about from a psychological perspective, but also it's like there's nothing cute about it. You
Right. Like
know,
you're
like
not
they're not
you
interesting.
you can like laugh, but you only laugh because you're trying not to like throw up.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and that's kind of where this guy Ivan Milat comes in for me. Is like most people have never heard of this guy. The only reason you would have heard of this guy is if you watch Wolf Creek and like, what's this based on? Then you went down a rabbit hole about Ivan Milat because he's just too brutal. He's too insane to be
Hmm.
charming or appealing. I mean, you look at one of these. The top guy is like a gay cannibal. The other one's a young Republican lawyer. The other guy's a part-time clown and a budding politician. Like there's something endearing about them in their own way that this guy doesn't have.
Totally. I don't think I've seen Wolf Creek. I feel like maybe Blair watched it and told me it was awful and she couldn't watch it.
Yeah, if I had to guess, when you brought up the whole Jay thing, I'm like, I know the kind of movies Jay likes, and this would not be
Yeah.
the kind of movie Jay would like.
I don't, we've definitely watched like some ones in Australia, but I think I'm thinking of a different one that involves a lake. But I think that one was like Norwegian or like that. What is that? Scandinavian. Anyway, continue.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think I've seen it. I don't think I've seen it specifically because I think Blair told me not to because she said it was too much.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna actually talk about like what parts of Wolf Creek are actually accurate down to the T as I get into the story. So, like I said, this guy, huge piece of shit, total garbage, did absolutely horrific things, and I'm gonna start with like one of the first red flags out there, and this is for the ladies who are listening. If you have a husband who is a complete loser, who does nothing but just drink on the front porch all day, and all he wants to do is pump you full of kids, that's probably a red flag to get the fuck out of there. So Ivan had 13 siblings, so 14 children in total, born into an impoverished family in New South Wales.
Wait, siblings or children?
14 children, 13 siblings.
Ugh.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just met someone having her fourth baby and I like could not hold my face in. I was like, a lot of babies.
Taylor, you have two kids. How on earth can two adults contain 14 children? Like, is that
You
even
literally can't.
doable?
No.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as you have three kids, you have to change your life because you have to like get a bigger car and like everything has to change because there's five of you now. But I watched the documentary, the Shiny Happy People about did you watch that?
No.
Um the Duggars are just like a really religious family that were on TV. They were like the 19 and counting family where they had like a bunch of
I
kids.
remember them. Yeah, yeah.
And then one thing they did, which was awful because like the girls were never like compensated for the work they did on the reality show and all of this, but like when you were 10 as a girl, you would have like two siblings to take care of. Like you weren't going to
Yeah.
school. You were like homeschooled, quotes, and they'd be like, "Oh, you have like two little siblings to take care of." Like you can't take care of 14 kids.
Taylor, if one
Yeah.
came to you and said, Taylor, we need 10 more children.
I could be convinced to have one more child, and I'd be upset about it because there'd be too many. I think three is too many for me personally. But no, I wouldn't. I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
He got a vasectomy. We're all set.
Well, those are reversible. I'm just saying, women, like if a guy comes to you and says, I refuse to work, I refuse to provide, and I also
Yeah, but it
need
doesn't make any
14
sense.
kids, it's
No.
like red flag. So obviously, like I said, two parents cannot contain a brood of 14 children, so they were obviously juvenile delinquents. I would say that, I mean, they were all scumbags. Like almost universally, they were kind of all scumbags. Ivan actually stood out though because his was a little bit more mean-spirited juvenile delinquency than his siblings. So the siblings were doing things like shoplifting candy, and doing stuff like
Hmm.
that. Whereas Ivan, when he reached his 20s, he kidnapped two female hitchhikers, raped one of them at knife point before they escaped and reported him. Like that's the kind of thing. Like he would kill animals with machetes. He would go into the outback and just use kangaroos for target practice, which I get it, they're an invasive species or whatever. But like still, he wasn't doing cute Dennis the Menace type activities with his juvenile delinquency. It was like a little bit next level.
At Girl Scout camp, we did archery. I know you're not talking archery, I know you're talking about a gun, but I'm really good at it, and so is Flo. So I think we might consider getting a target in our backyard. Not a kangaroo.
Yeah,
Maybe it could look like a kangaroo.
yeah,
And then
get
that
just
seems kind of
don't
fun.
just don't start hunting actual animals.
No,
Okay.
not in the plan, but I do think it might be cool to have a fake kangaroo with like a target on it. That sounds terrible, but I think it might be fun if it was like made of hay.
Just a picture of our logo. That's actually good branding. Why don't we sell that as merch? Why don't we sell target practice pictures of our faces as merch? That's actually a really good idea.
I don't hate that.
So Ivan was arrested, and while he was waiting for his court trial for this rape charge, he ended up fleeing Australia. He went to New Zealand, and then he came back and was promptly arrested and was found not guilty because this is the 1970s, and I just don't think human society took rape allegations very seriously, like
I know,
early
it's
on,
awful. Yeah.
and so he just got off.
I mean, early on, like it's happening forever. Yeah, it's terrible.
Exactly, exactly. Ivan would move to driving for public transportation for a living. That's basically his job, which is like literally it was like Andre Chikatilo. It's like the ideal job. Like when you get to like go across, you have no real permanent address. You just move from place to place, and that's what he did for a living. And in the middle of all this, he would also do other stupid shit like burglarize stores, steal cars, things like that. I'm gonna start this story with kind of where the dominoes started falling. It was clear to police that something was going on in the late 1980s to early 1990s in New South Wales because there were consistent stories coming out regarding backpackers visiting Australia and then going missing. People would show up, be in Australia, be in New South Wales. The last time they were seen it was a railway station or hitchhiking down the side of the road. Almost all of them were expats, not expats, like visitors, like Germans, Americans, Brits, things like that.
I'd love to hear if any of the listeners out there have any great stories about hitchhiking. Did you meet your husband? Did you meet someone who left you in their will? Did you learn how, I don't know, did anything good happen?
Man,
Exceptionally good. Like maybe you got from place to place without being murdered. Like that's fine. But like did anything like awesome happen? Are there like awesome stories of hitchhiking? Like is that how the Beatles were formed? Like anything cool? Because it seems bad.
I mean,
The
you gotta
beaches with
pick
their brothers.
you gotta pick where you hitchhike. So like I would hitchhike in Bel Air because then I would get picked up by like
You would not get picked up in Bel Air.
Amal Clooney will pick me up and say, "You got to be my husband, George." And it's like, cool. And then I go over there, and they're like, you're like my double. You should be cast in the movie." That's Taylor's mumbling things that are probably derogatory towards me. So, okay, so going back to the story. So the concept of a serial killer really wasn't that big at this time, and especially wasn't big in Australia. So for context, the first time the term quote serial homicide, which is the first utterance of anything similar to serial killer, came out, was an lecture given by FBI Special Agent Robert Ressler in 1974. 1991 is when Dahmer was captured, which
Yeah.
like this wasn't like we're not dealing with like, sure, the cops were probably lazy or not doing great, but like also can you really blame them? Like it's like the 1980s and people are going missing. It's like, I don't know, like we'll just look for the one person that goes missing, and if we don't find it, we don't find it. There's no connection being made here.
Yeah. I can't believe how long that like police reports weren't connected. Like you could like and something could happen in Dallas and you wouldn't know in
No,
Austin.
no.
Like that's crazy that like you can't like look someone up in a database and be like, oh yeah, this guy's done a lot of crimes all over the country.
Yeah,
I don't know any Australian states, so I just named American states.
no, you're right.
New,
So
New South Wales.
New South Wales is a state, Victoria is a
Mhm.
state, South Australia, whatever. I'm not going to. It doesn't matter. I looked up how many serial killers have been documented in both countries. How many, Taylor? U.S. is 2023 in total. How many serial killers were operating in the United States in total?
Wait, right now at the moment or in general since we've
No,
started breaking it down?
since we started documenting serial killers,
50.
3,204.
Wow.
Guess how many in Australia?
3,201.
81.
Wow, really?
Yeah, so
I just think someone got caught. Well, what's
Maybe
that
that.
proportionate to the number of people?
You know what? That was a tab I chose not to click on. So I
Cool,
don't
cool, cool, cool,
know.
cool, cool, cool. Fine. Continue.
Okay, I'll do the math on top of my head. 1 in 10. 1 in 10 people in the U.S. is a serial killer.
I
That's what it
knew
comes
it.
out to.
Fucking knew it. Yeah.
So the police know something is up, but at this point they aren't really entirely what's going on because they get all these reports of these missing hitchhikers. They don't know what to do. In 1992, two hikers in Belanglo State Forest, I nailed that, Belanglo State Forest, discover a body. They report this to the police, who find another body about 100 feet away from the first one. The police realize that these are the bodies of Joanne Walters and Caroline Clark, who disappeared 5 months earlier while hitchhiking in the area. Joanne had been stabbed, and this is going to come up a lot. And this is where I think this is so Wolf Creek. What's the worst place to get stabbed, do you think, Taylor?
Wait, do you die immediately or no?
No, you live.
In your face.
No.
Mm.
What this guy would do, and what they would do in the Wolf Creek movie, is he would stab between the vertebrae to
Ooh.
disconnect the spine, to paralyze the person.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna come up a lot. And it came up in the Wolf Creek movie, and it's a
That's terrifying.
terrifying concept.
I hate that.
So that's what happened to Joanne. She was stabbed to death, but one of those stabs actually paralyzed her before she ended up dying. Caroline had been shot 10 times in the head, and police basically presumed that whoever did this was trying to pull a Taylor and was using her head as target practice.
Wait, what does that mean?
Well, because you were trying to do target practice in the backyard, and like
Oh,
this
you
guy
could
just
try.
used a head. As,
A real person's head, though?
I know
That's
it's
awful.
different. It's different.
It's very different. And also, I have
Third,
a bow and arrow.
that's true. 13 months after this, so this is late October 1993, the bodies of Deborah Everest and James Gibson were discovered in the same forest as before. They disappeared on December 30th of 1989 while also hitchhiking. James had been stabbed repeatedly and also had a knife plunged into his spine.
Oh my God.
Deborah's skull was fractured from a beating she took, and she was also stabbed in the back as well, severing her spine.
Ugh.
By this point, police were like, we should probably start doing something. And they put together a task force very creatively called the Task Force Air and started working on a profile for the killer. During this time, a British man named Paul Onions called this task force and said 3 years earlier he was hitchhiking in the area, and a man who called himself Bill pulled over to offer him a ride. Paul accepted, and shortly thereafter, Bill pulls out a knife and some rope, saying he intends on robbing Paul. You have thoughts?
This was a huge thing on My Favorite Murder like 10 years ago because they were like, we fucking love Paul Onions.
No way. Okay, so you know this story.
Well, I know Paul Onions because they were like, Paul Onions is a fucking gem.
Dude, he comes up again. Like he's
Yeah.
actually really like he is the reason why this guy's not doing this
Yeah.
anymore. Well, then time killing him. But Paul makes a break for it when this guy Bill pulls this gun out, and he basically starts shooting at Paul running away from him, like from his car, which is actually also a direct scene in Wolf Creek, which like one of the people runs away and that happens. Paul flags down another motorist to help him escape, and together they describe Bill in his car to the police, which helps narrow their list of potential perpetrators down from 230 to this one Bill person. So the profile is built a profile of 230 people in New South Wales who this could be. And out of that, they're like, there's one guy who fits this description. So that's how they honed in on Ivan as this Bill character. It was around this time that police also found another bundle of skeletal remains in Belanglo Forest. They found the body of Simone Schmidl, who had also been backpacking and hitchhiking across Australia, and her spine was also severed. Nearby Simone's body was her partner, Gabriel. Oh, man.
Gabriel?
No, these are like super... There's two German people. There was two other German people that were found. I'll say Gaber and Anya because there's zero chance I'm getting through this last name. Either one of theirs. Anya had been decapitated and Gaber had been shot 6 times in the face. So there's a pattern emerging. Police are seeing a pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
So police have narrowed things down to at least think about Ivan as a potential culprit based on the whole Bill situation that Paul found himself in. They decide to watch and surveil Ivan's movements and see if he tips his hands to anything. Police called into Ivan's work and found out that he was either off or called in sick on the days that these people have all been reported missing. They also noted that he had sold a vehicle right after two of the bodies had been found, presumably because the vehicles had incriminating evidence in them.
Mm-hmm.
This is where Paul comes in as a hero again. He flew in. Paul's British. He was just in Australia for like a vacation. He flew back into Australia from Britain to help positively identify Ivan as Bill because they're doing this surveillance thing. So the police
Awesome.
take him up to the house. He looks out and is like, "Yep, that's Bill." And they arrest him for the attempted robbery of Paul. After they did this, they searched Ivan's house and they found weapons that were consistent with matching with the kind of weapons that were used to shoot the people that he shot, as well as a giant Bowie knife that could be used to split someone's spine if one chose to do that. And they also
Well, okay,
found
everyone in Australia has a Bowie knife, so that's cross that off the incrimination list.
they also had items that the victims owned scattered around his
Fine.
house. So
You don't need the Bowie knife. Everyone.
You don't need the Bowie knife. Yeah, that's true. So Ivan went to trial and pled not guilty. His family tried pretty hard to get him off, which, I mean, that's kind of the type of people they are. But really interesting about this is that Ivan claimed that it was like his brothers that did this. He was such a, even when his family's like giving testimony, they're like, Ivan couldn't have done this. He's up there on the stand saying it was my brother and pointing to other people in his family saying they did this.
Well, they're like, he didn't do
Scumbags.
it. So instead of being like, I didn't do it. That's amazing.
Yeah, I kind of love the chutzpah there. In 1996, he was found guilty and given life in prison. He would obviously constantly appeal his conviction, and he would just start doing some really crazy stuff. So at one point, he cut off one of his fingers and nailed it to the appellate court to say, like, look how badly I need to get paroled. Like he was a wild, crazy dude. He swallowed a bunch of razor blades. He went on a 9-day hunger strike one time because he wanted a PlayStation and the penitentiary wouldn't give him one. Which, like, that one I kind of get. That one's kind of understandable.
You do what you gotta do, I guess.
Razor blades are too. Hunger strike I can do, not razor blades.
Wait, what year is that with the
96.
Okay, that makes sense.
In 2019, thank God, he died a very, very horrible death of stomach and esophagus cancer at the ripe old age of 74 years old.
Wow.
He apparently only ever confessed to killing these people to his mother because him and his mom were apparently really close. And apparently, the word is that he told her that he did this, but otherwise, he maintained his innocence at the very end. You can actually watch a YouTube clip of him being interviewed at the very end. So this is when he has like late stage cancer, and they're like, Ivan, just tell us what's going on. Just tell us what happened. And he said something like, you could take a blowtorch to my eyes and my tongue, and I could not tell you what you want me to tell you, or something. Like, you like really held on to his innocence.
I feel a little bit torn. I usually am like, you should just say that you did it if you're gonna die, because whatever. But I also kind of feel like, good for him. I don't know why I feel that way.
Kind of proud of him.
Yeah, like, all right.
Yeah, he really believed it. During
He did it right though. There's no way he didn't.
No, he for sure did it. Like, they literally found the stuff in his house. Like, it was very, very clear. Also, he should have been convicted with raping two women by knife point when he was like 27. Like, he wasn't he wasn't good.
No. Yeah.
So during Ivan's incarceration and even following his death, police started investigating other crimes that could be attributed to him. The task force that was assigned to catching him aggregated a total of 58 other cases of missing backpackers during the years Ivan would have been active. Behavioral profilers noted that the first known killing that Ivan committed was when he was 45 years old. And they also noted, they're like,
yeah.
If anything, he started in his 30s, maybe even his 20s. Like,
yeah.
So, as of right now, police feel really, really confident as to 3 other murders that they can attribute to Ivan. So in 1971, that's how early we're going back, the murder of a pregnant Karen Rowland who disappeared while traveling to Canberra. Her body was discovered a month later. Eyewitnesses at the time reported seeing a gold-colored Ford chasing after Karen's vehicle. At this time, Ivan lived in the area and also owned a gold Ford Fairmont.
That's not suspicious.
In 1987, Peter Letcher was hitchhiking to his parents' house and never arrived. His body was found in a cave system a few months later. Ivan's wife well, I forgot to mention, Ivan was married for a period of this time. Ivan's
Hmm.
wife reported that he would frequently go on hikes at or in the cave system, and that the day around the time that this guy went missing, Peter went missing, Ivan's wife had left him shortly before that had happened. They also found that Peter had multiple gunshot wounds to his face and stab wounds to his body.
Was there anything sexual to it, or because it's like men and women, or it doesn't seem like
Oh,
there's a
I
pattern.
just skipped over the fact that he literally raped every woman that was
Cool, cool,
listed
cool,
here.
cool. Did he rape the
Yeah.
men?
No,
So
no.
he just wanted to kill them at that point, but he raped all the women.
Yeah, most of the people that he ended up catching, it makes sense. Most of the people he ended up like catching and killing were couples. So he would,
Mm,
you know,
yep.
if
Hmm.
you watch like Wolf Creek, what they insinuate in that is that he would paralyze the man using the Bowie knife to then rape the woman in front of him, then kill the man in front of the woman, and then kill the woman. Like there was a chronology to this. Like he
Wow.
wanted to get like the horror out of the experience as much as
Jesus.
possible.
That's a fucking horror. Yep. Well, congratulations.
Yeah, he did it. Like he definitely lived his dream. In 1991, Diane Pinocchio, I swear that's actually what it looks like. It is. She went missing while trying to hitchhike in some Australian town that I can't pronounce. It's like Queens Bayon or something, but I'm not gonna whatever. Just assume it's some Australian town. She had her spine severed, so police
Mm.
immediately made the link there.
Yeah.
Especially because where she disappeared was an area that they knew Ivan was living and active in because they had found other bodies in that area. Like that's what
How many
ties
are
it all
there?
together.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you.
Okay. What can I guess?
Yes,
72. Or no, am I right?
you might be. You actually might be. So, okay, so the three that I just counted off to you, those are the ones that police are talking about. Those are the ones where they're like, we are damn sure that you have to go.
No, no.
Oh,
I'm
these
moving my body while you're talking. Keep going. I'm
okay,
standing. I'm at a standing desk.
very. It's like you're working out, drinking, educating yourself. You're getting all of it. All
I mean, I can see your knee. You're like very casual right now
I'm
as
being very
well.
casual.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
So these three are the ones that police are talking about. Then there are six others that police are basically acting as though Ivan's like the main person of interest, but they won't come out and say, Ivan, we think he did these as well. So now we're up to 16 people in total. Then there's 23 other murders where Ivan is a person of interest. So
Jesus.
there's also another cohort here of ones that we haven't gotten to yet. So it could be 70 plus, but this is where we're at right now.
Wow.
But luckily he's dead. Luckily he's dead. He died in 2019, so fairly recently. He lived a pretty good life, given that he lived to be 74 years old. Although it sounds like his time in prison was an absolute torture, and he got the shit kicked out of him on his first day, which was nice.
Yay. How long was he in prison?
He went into 96 till 2019. So what is that? Math 23 years. Which, interestingly, is longer than most of his victims lived. Because most of his victims were 18 to 22 years old.
Ugh, youth. You're so stupid. Don't go
Yeah.
hitchhiking.
So that is our story, which Taylor mostly predicted. If y'all haven't seen Wolf Creek, this is not. I
Right.
love
I'm
it.
like, I don't.
I'm
He just
actually.
he
So I'm
doesn't
probably
even want to
gonna.
see it.
I actually own Wolf Creek. I'm probably gonna watch it tonight. But I will say this, like, guys, if you're like into horror and you're trying to introduce your girlfriend or like the girl you're seeing into like horror, and it's like it'll be cute.
This
We'll
is
watch
not
a
it.
horror movie, and she'll, oh man, it is just violent. It is not fun violence. It is not Saw violence. It is like
Right.
I don't know what you'd compare it to. Like it's like watching Schindler's List on a date. Like it's just not gonna work, in my opinion.
I agree. I would not want to watch Schindler's List on a date. You'd be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, nobody's into like hanging out after that experience. So that's my tale, the tale of Ivan Milat and the tale of Australia's vicious serial killer.
Wow. There's lots more there. It's just so I looked up how long does it take to drive across Australia. I think if you like didn't stop, it would take 4 days. But it's big.
The entire middle of it, 20% of
And it's like nothing
Australia's
in the middle of
landmass,
it. Yeah.
20% of Australia's landmass is desert.
Yeah.
Like just desert, as in like nothing exists. Like it is a scary place. And that's why Wolf Creek works so well, is because it's all set out in the middle of the desert.
Hmm.
So, anyways, that's the tale. I guess we're gonna fake cut it off here and do the magic of editing.
I have listener mail for both episodes. So for this one, I wanted to also, Nadine wrote back, our Canadian friend. She wrote back and we were talking about child abductions. And she read the book Relax, A User's Guide to Life in the Age of Anxiety. And I kind of think that I might have read that too. But I read something similar, but Professor Tiffany Caulfield, she said, kind of examines about kids walking to school and why you don't have let your kids walk to school alone anymore because we're talking about kidnappings like at malls and stuff. And basically it like barely ever happens. It's like extremely, extremely rare to have a kid just like picked up off the street. Like if someone, you'd have to leave a kid on the alone on the street for 1,000 years for him to be like for 100% odds of him being taken by a stranger. So like it's very rare. And my friend Ben, who lives in Florida, he also uh, talked about it too, who said in reality, like 99.999 kidnappings are either parental or a 15-year-old taking off to Florida with her 18-year-old boyfriend. So like that's definitely true. That happens a lot there. And also most trafficking is like taking advantage of people and nothing like Taken, the movie. So that's good news.
That's good
You're
news.
probably not going to get kidnapped, but if you do, you're very special.
I think the ramifications of it, it's like a plane's also not gonna crash. But whenever
Right,
there's
but when it
turbulence,
happens,
what's
you're
your
like,
first thought? Your first thought is, holy fuck, this thing's gonna go down.
totally. When I can't find my kid for 2 seconds, I'm like, they're gone. I'm going to be on the news.
Bill Burr had a really funny skit or comedy special about like kidnappings and kids, where he's like, "There's a reason why American kids are getting more and more obese, it's so that they're less kidnappable because they're too heavy to move." Probably mean spirited, but also he does it better than I do. So wait, we
Amazing.
so wait, we do
Wait.
we have two.
Oh my God, everyone. I'm so sorry. No, that was it. That was Ben and Nadine. We're cutting off now. Follow us at Doomed to Fail Pod on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Threads, which is new, and we're on that now. On
Are we
YouTube, put
really?
everything on YouTube. Oh, of course we are. Put everything on YouTube, and then yeah. So we're gonna do